How's the chicken?
The day after the big rains. And we can at least look ahead to improving weather conditions. And some places had a bit of improvement today. But we've got some quiet weather ahead for a couple of days at least before we have to start dealing with other weather systems that'll be moving along in the flow. And we will be talking about that and so much more tonight on the Joe and Joe Weather Show, which is brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York. Once the flood dries up, you might need some mulch, topsoil, and sand. You can get your truck over there. Maybe you need stuff to help you clean up out of any of the heavy rains that fell. So head over to Omni 6317561125 because nowhere can you find better prices. And these days, better prices are important. And the website is
OmniTrueValue.com.
Yes, and Tempest by Weatherflow, the revolutionary Tempest weather system, would have been great to have during this big rain event from yesterday. So get one and join the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet. The link is on the top of the chat, pinned to the top of the chat board. It's also on the description to this video. And if you make any purchase of either the Tempest Weatherflow weather system or anything else, because they have all sorts of weather gadgets, gizmos, and weather fashion, use the coupon code Joe and Joe Weather Show and you will get
10% off.
Yes. So
I'm in flux right now.
Yes, you are in flux. You're rotating your house. You're rotating your house so you can get yourself into a better position. Is that what's going on?
No, I just. Did you want to do something in there, dear? Or?
Well, yeah, but just he told me last time to point it in that corner.
Point it in this corner? You mean like
right? Because otherwise we could see the glare beautifully.
Yes, so like that. Okay.
Oh, thank you, dear.
So you avoid the window glare.
Thank you, dear.
And the curtain and.
Thank you, dear.
Circle.
Yes.
Okay.
And you're probably wondering why we're in this situation.
Well, I'm not because you already told me, but I guess our studio audience could be curious about why you are where you are tonight.
It's a little too damp down in the Studio A, or Studio B, actually, B standing for basement.
Right. Well, how much drizzle did you get?
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing is that on the official National Weather Service listing of places, you will see Putnam Valley, but it is taken by a cooperative weather observer, not me.
Right.
And that cooperative observer said that as of 9 o'clock or 9:30 this morning, he had 6.25 inches or something along those lines. And I'm kind of scratching my head and saying, where have you been? Because I had more than that at midnight last night. In fact, at midnight last night, Joe, I already had 6.77 inches. And it tapered off to a drizzle. And I said, oh, thank God. Thank God that it's hopefully it's over now. No, it wasn't over. As soon as I went to bed, I could hear the rain beating down on the roof. It was coming down really hard. And by the time all over was said and done this morning, I had 8.93 inches of rain, just shy of 9 inches of rain. And interestingly, I have a problem. Our house has a problem. We could take up to 4 inches of rain. When we get more than that, the problem is that moisture kind of seeps in through cracks in the foundation. Apparently, that's what it happens sometimes. And that moisture seeps down into the basement where my office is. And to make a long story short, in my office, half of the rug was very, very damp. And so what we did was we spent the day moving everything or most everything out of the office, including a huge, you don't see this. I don't think you see it on our show, but behind me, there's a big, beautiful roll-top desk, which Renata got for me as an engagement present back when,
when you were engaged.
Yeah. And, I don't often think about it, but I certainly knew it today. That's a heavy damn piece of furniture.
Yeah, I would imagine it would be.
And so we moved that out, and then we just pulled the rug back. And as I speak to you right now, there are 4 fans, 2 dehumidifiers. In fact, one of them is my daughter's, and the other is one that we purchased online at 2:30 this morning at Best Buy. And in fact, it was the last one at Best Buy.
Oh,
when we arrived there and we picked it up this morning, the guy who's right behind us looked at us and said, I hope you didn't get the last one. Actually, there was one other humidifier there, but it was different. This was presumably the top of the line model, and we certainly needed it to suck out all the moisture. It's going to be a few days before I'm going to be able to be back.
Well, let's hope you don't get any mold out of it.
Yeah.
You don't want that. And the other thing is your electric bill is going to be a lulu.
Well, you know what? Our electric supplier up here at 4:10 this morning decided to cut off power for only about 10 minutes, but it was interesting to see the power suddenly go off, and there I am lying in bed and saying to myself, all right, how long is this going to last? And thankfully, it didn't last very long. So,
yeah. Well, I can remember back whatever year it was, 2013 or 2014, on Long Island, when Islip set the statewide record for 24-hour rainfall, which was basically 13 inches of rain that fell in about 6 hours' time. And I remember waking up that early morning when it was raining, and I never saw rain come. I mean, it looked like somebody was. I always described it as being as if somebody was standing on above me on the roof, and just literally pouring a bucket of water down. You know how when you pour water out of a bucket, it just comes out as one flow. I mean, that's how hard it was raining in that 6-hour time frame. It was just, I don't think I've ever seen it rain harder than that. I'd imagine it must have been raining about as hard by you yesterday as I just described.
Yeah, Renata, in fact, looking out the window at one point, said, "Oh my God!" She did. In fact, she made that declaration more than once yesterday, looking out the window. It was coming down at a tremendous rate. Easily 1 to 2, maybe even 2 to 3 inches an hour at one point. And the thing is that we've been up here in Putnam Valley almost 21 years. In fact, the anniversary is coming up in about 3 weeks. There's only 2 other storms that dropped as much rain on us last night, or early this morning, as what we saw this morning. And one of them was the great nor'easter of April 2007. And the other was Tropical Storm Irene. In both of those cases, we picked up in excess of 7 inches of rain. And this one, as I said last night, foolishly, at midnight when I checked the rain gauge, and so it was like 6.77 inches. I said, oh dear, it looks like we're going to fall just short of 7 inches. And somebody up there must have been saying, oh, really? You think that's going to be the case? And of course it wasn't, because about a half an hour or an hour later, the rain picked up in earnest again, and Giulio Gallo too.
Right. Well, yes, I'm looking. I just pulled up the Weather Service rainfall amounts, and for Putnam County, it says 1 mile east of Putnam Valley, 8.93 inches. And
so they did include us.
Yes, you're labeled as broadcast media.
Yes.
Okay.
What is this? What are we doing right now, Joe? This is
broadcast media. Of course. And Mayapack 8.13, so that's not too far from you. And the other Putnam Valley was 6.35, and that was at 9 a.m. this morning. Yours was at 9:30.
Yeah. See, but you know what? First of all, Putnam Valley, it covers it's not just a tiny little town. It's fairly large in extent. And the way things were going yesterday into last night, it would not surprise me if one part of Putnam Valley was seeing just a little. Meanwhile, the other part of Putnam Valley, maybe north or south or whatever, where I was, getting pounded. I mean, I picked up another 2.16 inches of rain after midnight, after I had declared, oh, hopefully this is over. All we have is just a little bit of drizzle. But then apparently there was a localized cell that passed over my house, and well, you saw, you just heard the situation.
Yeah.
It was absolutely amazing.
Stony Point in Rockland County at 6.36. That was the top one there. Shrub Oak in Westchester County was 8.10. In Suffolk County on Long Island, Remsenburg Spionk was 3.36. Center Moriches right behind it at 3.26. And there was actually a 4:30 in the morning. There was a tornado warning that was issued. Apparently something spun up over there, a small one, probably an EF0. And in Orange County, the U.S. Military Academy, 8.12. I'm just reading the top numbers here. Passaic in New Jersey, 3.08. Park Ridge in Bergen County, 2.83. In Connecticut, Salem, 2.77. 3.6 miles southeast of Salem, Connecticut. That's the top one in New London County. New Haven County, Guilford, Guilford. How did they pronounce that? Guilford?
Guilford.
Yeah,
Guilford.
2.78. Saybrook Manor in Middlesex County, 2.43, and Armonk, 2.60. It's been kind of hard that these numbers have been coming in. They haven't really posted. They were sort of in late. I was looking at the at the Mount Holly website, and I just want to bring that up. Let me see if they got any. They didn't even have rainfall amounts up there this morning. So when I checked, but let me just see if there's anything. There's a latest public information statement. Okay, let's see.
I got to tell you, though, even though, half of my office, the carpeting is all wet and damp. And hopefully, as I speak to you, it's getting drier because of all the stuff that's going on down there to dry things out. But when I took a look at some of the footage of places just a stone's throw away from where I live, I mean, roadways that collapsed, people flooded out. It really, I picked up almost 9 inches of rain, but believe it or not, it could have been a heck of a lot worse.
Yeah. The Mount Holly, just a public information statement from in Middletown, Delaware. Apparently, they had an EF1 tornado. Estimated peak wind was 100 miles an hour. The path length was 1.19 miles. The path width was about 200 yards. And this was at 4:49 p.m. Yesterday. So,
right.
It was all sorts of, but they have not put up a list of rainfall amounts. So we'll have to just wait to see if they get around to it. But what are you going to do? It's over, and now at least. Although there is there are two small thunderstorms. Let me just bring the radar up. I was a little cautious today because on the idea that a scattered thunderstorm would pop up, and if it did, you'd wind up with some localized flash flooding wherever the storm happened to be. And up until through mid-afternoon there was nothing. But this evening on the radar, there's actually a severe thunderstorm warning up in a county that's to the west of Trenton, on the other side. So that might be Bucks County, but I'm not sure. We'll have to check on the obs. But there's a severe thunderstorm working through there. There's just a couple of isolated patches here and there. And still some heavy rain going on north of I-90 and up the Northway in north central and northeastern New York. At one point early this morning, Joe, I think every county in Vermont was under a flash flood warning. And there's now just one county under a flash flood warning. But still getting some rain there and in New Hampshire and eastern Maine. But except a few of these scattered cells here, we're done. And I guess we should be done for a couple of days. So I'm not really thinking we're going to see much tomorrow or Wednesday.
And you know what? Another thing about today, this afternoon, I made a comment to Renata about this looking skyward. I said, I haven't seen a sky this blue. This is, Joe, what we had today was when you used to be on Pix 11, You used to make reference to this. You just refer to it as tropical skies because it's the kind of sky today that we had that you would see in the Caribbean.
Oh
It was a
yeah.
beautiful blue sky, big billowing, puffy cumulus clouds, and I'm shaking my head and I'm saying, I said, not a smoke particle in sight.
No,
This is
and your dew points probably came down just enough, since they were so ridiculously miserable in the 70s, just to get them back into the 60s. Probably felt a whole lot better, well, especially
yeah,
once the sun came out. Was
yeah.
there? I mean, because it's hard to imagine there would be any moisture left in the air, considering it all pretty much fell down as rain yesterday.
Well, and the thing that tonight on all of the news channel, I mean, I was switching around, seeing various different types of coverage of what hit us up here or whatever. And so many people, I never saw it rain so hard. I never.
Memories are so short.
I've been here 15, 18 years. I tell you, this is the worst flooding I've ever seen in my life. And I said, really, really. So I guess you forgot 1999 Tropical Storm Floyd, which did a number on much of the Hudson Valley. In fact, up here in Putnam County and also in portions of northern sections of Westchester, we had unofficial rainfall totals of something like 10 to 12 or 14 inches, so even rivaling what we had today. So that was one. Of course, Irene was another that dropped a tremendous amount of rainfall. Ida, which really didn't hit us that hard up here, here in the Hudson Valley, but that dumped a copious amount of rainfall. And then we have our dear governor of New York standing up and telling everybody this was a once in 1,000 year event. And I said,
well, you know where that came from? that came from I don't remember. I can't remember now where they measured this, but somewhere up there in the Hudson Valley, they calculated the rain. It was based on the rainfall rate, which apparently at one point was wherever it was coming down at 10 inches an hour. And according to some scale that they use, that's a one in a 1,000 year type event. It's I shake my head with this sort of stuff because it's like, why 1,000? Why not a 1 in 10,000 year event? Or let's really go all off the deep end and just go, a 1 in a 1 million year event.
Well, this is how I looked at it. I think it's somewhat analogous to this in astronomy. When a total eclipse of the sun takes place, the news media always says, rare eclipse of the sun. Oh, the never to be foreseen event here. And the thing is that total eclipses of the sun taken worldwide occur once every 18 months. Again, somewhere around the world, there's going to be a total eclipse of the sun. Now, for a specific geographic location, a total eclipse of the sun will take place on average once every 375 years.
Right.
So if you live in a spot, you may have to wait like 400 years or 300 years to see a total eclipse of the sun, even though worldwide, one is coming on through somewhere in the world every 18 months. So when I heard Governor Hochul today say, it was a once in 1,000 year event, what I tried to work that in, it says, all right, we know that we have had drenching, may I use the term downpours. And sadly, in fact, Joe, somebody in Orange County, a woman who was holding her dog, I think she was trying to surmount this rushing bit of water that was occurring in front of her house. And the water apparently just knocked her down and, took both her and the dog, and she died.
Yeah.
She died. I mean, you see something like that, be smart. Just like if you see a big area of water in front of you, if you're driving, don't try to go over that. I mean, it's crazy. Just turn around. The term is turn around and don't drown. But when I heard the governor say this was a once in 1,000 year event, we know that we've had other events of similar magnitude in the tri-state area, but maybe, as you just pointed out, for that one specific spot where this person made this calculation of 10 inches per hour, that, yeah, it was like a total eclipse of the sun. In that particular area right there, that was the 1 in 1,000 year event. But taken as a whole, the
Right.
tri-state area,
We've been down
50
this road before.
radius of New York City,
Right.
it's just,
We've been down this road before. We'll be down this road again, unless
yes.
of course, what was the? I forgot what highway it was north of you, up near West Point. I don't know if you saw the video of the.
Route
Uh,
6,
what's that?
Route 6.
Route 6. Yes, which is not a.
Route
You
6.
know, that's not an unbusy road. Let's put it that way. I mean, I was really, my jaw dropped when I saw how the road collapsed the way it looked. I mean, my God, but it did lead a question in my mind, and then we'll get to the weather. You know, how much. We really have to ask ourselves this question because the infrastructure has changed so much in the last 50 years, 20 years, even 10 years. And I just wonder sometimes, especially when we had the Ellicott City in Maryland, the whole conversation surrounding that one, who had basically two 500-year floods like 3 years apart, and it turned out that a lot of the flooding that was caused there is because of the infrastructure and how they built the roads, and that the natural draining that was there was no longer there, and now they had now they've done it they've done it so that you know the drainage would be there. But I question sometimes when I see some of this stuff. It's like how much of the building that's been done, uh, and how much of the that it's changed the normal drainage process. Granted, this was a big event and this was a big rain, so it was going to be flooding anyway. But I just wonder sometimes, with all the building that's going on, even in rural areas, how that changes the how things flood out in those, and how the water drains or doesn't drain anymore.
Well, you're absolutely right. And I said this back when we had Ida a couple of years ago. And once again, Governor Hochul came on. And I love the politicians. The politicians are always there to make their statements in front of the TV cameras or whatever. But the main fact of the matter is that this is old infrastructure, that New York City is basically using the same type of infrastructure to get rid of heavy rainfall that they did 100 years ago or even 50 years ago. And now that we're seeing apparently these heavy duty rains coming more frequently, or at a greater number per, let's say, decade or whatever. I mean, that old infrastructure, those sewers, for example, sometimes just cannot take it. And so you see the water coming out of the sewers, and people, in ground floor apartments, illegal apartments, I might add, in some cases.
Well, yeah,
Those.
that's a big issue.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. And then we have the politicians saying, "Why does this happen? Why does this happen?" Well, how about you allocate next time you're up in Albany or next time you're in Washington or whatever, allocate X number of dollars so that you can start on working or reworking the infrastructure so that we can see major storms like this. We can see the infrastructure hold some of this moisture and divert it and do whatever else so that we don't have this type of problem that we seem to have every time we have heavy duty rain. And to prove my point, I remember with Ida, I went back to the newspapers, New York Times or whatever, from 30, 40, 50 years ago. And basically it was the same story.
Yeah.
You had it was the same litany of politicians making the same speeches and saying something must be done. And nothing was ever done.
Right.
And there's going to be something when the next major storm hits the immediate New York City area, all the New York people. That was the other thing that was crazy. I'm looking out my window, Joe, yesterday afternoon. It's coming down to beat the band. The thunder is rumbling. And I said, I wonder what they're doing at Yankee Stadium. And the game was being played at Yankee Stadium. There was not a drop of rain down there.
Well, it took forever. We talked about this yesterday morning. If you drew a line from drew a line from just north of Philadelphia to just north of New York City to just north of Hartford to just north of Boston, north and west of there, that's where all the rain sat all during the afternoon. And it wasn't until later in the evening that it really started to finally move eastward, and it just sat there all day, and it was watching it on the radar was I would check it. The radar 4 hours after I checked it the first time looked almost the same. I mean, nothing hardly moved.
I mean, and we had a jump start here. Oh, I mean, if those of
Yeah.
you who were tuned in to Joe and Joe yesterday at 11 o'clock in the morning, I mean, Renata mentioned that on our rain gauge already we had 0.55 inches of rain, whereas hardly anything occurred anywhere else in and around the vicinity. That was just one renegade cell, and when I saw that, I said, we is in big trouble. Because if that's what one cell is going to do in such a short time, and this mass of rain was heading in from the north and west, I knew we were in trouble. Now, I said to myself, all right, looks like this is going to be one of those 4 to 6 inch jobs. And a little bit underplayed in that outlook or that forecast with the almost 9 inches that ultimately fell here during the day and into last night.
Well, the surface map. This is the 2 o'clock in the afternoon surface map, so let's do the 5 p.m., which is the last available one. And the front is offshore, but the low center is in southwestern New Hampshire. One low there, another low just east of Block Island, and that is prolonging the rain that I showed you on the radar a little while ago in upstate New York and up into Vermont, New Hampshire, and in parts of Maine. But it is going in the right direction. I mean, you think back, if we look, I just want to go back one day. Let's go back to 24 hours ago just to show you. I mean, look at this was 24 hours ago at 5 o'clock in the afternoon yesterday, where you had a low sitting somewhere north of Syracuse, you know, this warm sector that's set up with the stationary frontal boundary right down the Hudson Valley to New York City, another low analyzed near Trenton, and 24 hours later, I mean, you know, it's barely moved a little over 100 miles to the east. I mean, it's just taken this long to get things moving into the atmosphere, and that was the big problem yesterday too, with the southerly flow in the upper atmosphere, the upper low the trough so far to the west, the blocking that's up in Greenland. I mean, these systems are just it was a perfect setup really for a crawling event and a long duration heavy rain, tropical moisture, dew points in the 70s just about everywhere. I mean, it was all there. And on the satellite loop this evening, you see a lot of clouds still up in northern New England, but the clearing line is moving through Connecticut and into Massachusetts now. And there's a little arm that's come back to the southwest, which is why we've seen, you know, these two little thunderstorms that developed in eastern Pennsylvania in the last couple of hours and now moving into parts of northern New Jersey. But they're not going to last long. They should fall apart. Much of the eastern part of the United States actually today enjoyed a really nice day, including me. We only had a high of 82 today. It was nice and sunny pretty much all day long. So we've got clear skies, no smoke around, which is really good. Clear skies from most of the Great Lakes, the Ohio Valley down into the southeast. Seeing some thunderstorms firing up down in the plains and in the western lakes. And that is with the next slow-moving weather front that'll be headed to the east. But at least we're in a good spot with that now, Joe, because slow-moving means that we should not have anything really of consequence to deal with for the next couple of days.
Right. I need a couple of days to dry out, and not just inside, but also outside as well.
And you see the lightning strikes there. Looks like the cells have reached their peak intensity and are starting to weaken a little bit, but the origins are coming down from the Poconos and then heading southeast. It's just those two little blips, and that's it. And the rain, you know, just a couple of lightning strikes going on up in northern New Hampshire at the moment. But other than that, there really isn't a whole lot in the way of. There's hardly any in the way of thunderstorms that's going on in New England. The wide radar view, just another check here. We've got some showers going on in coastal North Carolina. Also some showers and a couple of thunderstorms in north central Florida. Coming off southeast Louisiana and coastal Mississippi and Alabama. A few showers and a thunderstorm there. Like there's a little storm right on the South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia triple point, which is northeast of me. Meanwhile, we've got a bunch of severe thunderstorms, severe thunderstorm warnings up on the upper peninsula of Michigan and northern Wisconsin. Also, back into northwestern Iowa and cutting across Nebraska in half. And you see all those yellow boxes, all severe thunderstorm warnings. Western Kansas, eastern Colorado, seeing some severe weather there. And we're seeing some downpours and thunderstorms up in the northern Rockies and into the middle of the state of Washington. So, it's a July day. You're going to see stuff like this going around. The Storm Prediction Center, as far as severe weather risk is concerned, it's giving us a nice little update here. We've got slight to enhanced risk up the western plains to the western Great Lakes, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 severe thunderstorm watches are up at the moment, Joe, from eastern Colorado on the southern side, and the Upper Peninsula of Michigan on the on the northeastern side. So it's like a train of severe thunderstorm watches. But other than that, not much going on in the east. They have a small area of marginal risk indicated in Connecticut and Rhode Island and Massachusetts, but I think that's probably from some storms that formed earlier. So I'm not. I don't think they're gonna be anything. There's gonna be anything there forming during the overnight process. Tomorrow, next couple of days, thunderstorm activities, a little more subdued. We have an east-west area of marginal to slight risk from Michigan westward across Iowa into Nebraska, South Dakota, and on up into eastern Montana. That comes with a small 2% tornado risk for Nebraska and southern Iowa. And then day 3, which is Wednesday into Thursday, they've got this area of marginal risk from Maine, upstate New York, northern Pennsylvania, back through the Ohio Valley, through the middle Mississippi and the Missouri River Valley Basin in a marginal to slight risk for severe weather there, and rainfall amounts for the next 7 days. It's hard to tell. They still got big numbers here up in northern New England. I just wonder, how much of that is still from today, and then for the next weather systems that come along. As we go further south, they have a half to 3/4 of an inch indicated from southernmost Connecticut south into Virginia and North Carolina. Heavier rains in the Ohio Valley and across through Illinois, Missouri, into eastern Kansas of anywhere from 1.5 inches to some areas as much as 2.5 to 3 inches plus. And Izzy D hits the tip jar tonight. Wonder how many places broke the all-time one-day record. I don't know. That's a good question. I just assumed that somebody did, because I can't imagine all the rain that fell that records weren't set somewhere.
I wish I could. I did not have, at the time, this is in 2011, we did not have a weather station set up at our home. So I cannot make a definitive comparison between Irene and what we just went through. I can tell you that Renata had what we use normally as a iced tea or a lemonade jug, about 12 inches high, in the backyard on our back patio. And when she went to check it toward the end of Irene, the water was almost all the way up to the top. So I think Irene probably beat what we had today, but that's in an unofficial sense. 12, but I think once you get past 7 inches, 7 inches, 8 inches, 10 inches, 12 inches, it really doesn't matter anymore. It's just a hell of a lot of rain and a hell of a lot of problems if you end up with a leak somewhere in your home or somewhere in your garage or whatever, with all of that wet weather. Water, fire is one thing, but water damage is something else altogether.
And by the way, it should be noted that in situations like this, especially in the summertime in particular, when you've got a setup that involves a lot of tropical air, and we mentioned this yesterday when we looked at the WPC rainfall forecast map, which was basically showing it's sort of a swath of 2 to 5 inches in the Northeast. Anytime
you mentioned yesterday in our discussion, he said, yeah, that area indicated by WPC may say 2 to 5, but again, because of the high level of humidity And if convection becomes involved, that could
Right.
very easily be double.
Double it.
And
You know what? 2 to 5 is a fair forecast, but it should you put the caveat in there that it could easily be double that amount in some local areas due to convection or any one of a bunch of other factors that could be in play. Yeah, and I think that's a good that's a good rule to remember when we deal with situations like this. Whatever you think, the forecast, the general amounts that are being put out by the models, which tend to be on the smoothish side, you're going to say, okay, well, it looks like 1 to 3. Oh, that's fine. It looks like that sort of makes sense. But it could for somebody it could be 2 to 5, 2 to 6, or whatever.
right, or 8 or 9.
Right, 8 or 9. Now, one thing that was also striking, and I have the upper air here. Last week we were talking about how this upper low dropping down from north central Canada just basically sits around and spins and spins and spins, and that's what is going to be doing. But with respect to the system from yesterday, we could pick out the shortwave yesterday evening. It's a little hard on this wider view, but if you were to pull up the tighter view of this map, right in here is where the shortwave is. And we were getting the rain from this at a time where the upper features were not weakening, they were actually strengthening as it lifted up to the northeast. In fact, an closed upper low formed in western New York this morning. So, that was another driver here. This was not something that was going to fall apart during the overnight hours. It was going to do exactly the opposite.
Yes.
Because the upper air was strengthening. And the other thing of note when you look at the way the setup of the upper air is, take a look out here near Greenland, where you've got this. Well, you have this closed upper high east of Newfoundland, and it's ridged up all the way to Greenland. That's been there for the better part of 2 weeks in one form or another.
Right.
Ebbing and flowing, and that just basically has been sitting there like a block. The upper low over the Great Lakes can't go anywhere because that's still out there this week, and there you go, just spins away. Now there's going to be other systems rotating around this and trying to move through the northeast later this week and this weekend, but at least for now, it seems that any kind of short waves that are in there are not going to be amplifying as they move into the northeast. So that at least that tells me at least that a repeat performance of this should not the next two weather systems that come through won't be a repeat performance of what we just had, because the 500 is a little bit different.
Thank God.
Can you imagine if we had a back-to-backer?
No, I don't want to think. And in fact, if things were just a little bit different, I mean, the folks who lived in northern and north central New Jersey might have gotten what I got. And, they came off, was it last week? Something 4 to 6 inches. And then, they would have had another 4 to 6 or 5 to 8 inches of it. It's crazy.
Right. Now, I'm just noticing here, and this is just an observation on my part, not forecasting anything because there's nothing really to forecast at this point, but looking at the upper air in the long range, after this rotating upper low finally gets out of the way, which looks like it's be sometime early next week, another upper low moving off from the west coast moves across the Great Lakes, and then another trough drops into the east. But what's really caught my eye here, Joe, this is day 12 or 13, so it may not be it probably won't look like this. But I just want to illustrate here. This is an upper air that we better not get if there's a tropical storm or a hurricane off the East Coast, because that upper air setup is a problem. Okay, that is a problem if there's a tropical storm. If there were to be a tropical storm, say east of the Bahamas or off the southeast coast of the U.S., because it'll just shoot right up the coast if that were the case.
Yeah, we've had that in the past. 1976, Hurricane Bell, which was almost like locked in a channel between a ridge offshore and a trough coming in from the west, and came right up into I think Fire Island, Long Island, and then we had Gloria in 1985 again, locked right in to a pattern just like what you're alluding to, Joe. So we don't
Yeah.
we
Well,
don't want to see that.
no, and as I, as this pattern, I don't want to sound repetitive because I've said this a few times, but I'll say it again. If we keep seeing these troughs drop into the east, and we're a month from now, and we're into August, where we know that tropical systems are going to start revving up, unless we have a repeat of last year where August was a dead month, and that doesn't seem, to have 2 dead Augusts back to back would be highly unusual. But if these troughs keep wanting to drop into the eastern part of the United States like this, if that continues into August and September, that is not a good sign for the East Coast.
No, it would not be a good sign. And considering what I've just gone through and what so many have gone through here in the Hudson Valley, that's the last thing we'd want to see would be a system not only with the rain, the tropical rains, but also with the potential of very, very strong winds as well. The saving grace, I guess, we did have a brief power hit in the wee hours of the morning this morning, but it didn't last very long. One thing I remember about Itzaia was the fact that we were out of power and without internet and without for something like 4 days.
Oh.
And
Well,
we don't really need that, do we, folks?
No. So just kind of quick, looking at the surface map, there'll still be some leftover rain tonight in northern New England. Finally pulls away tomorrow. Most of the east is just going to be in July mode for tomorrow and Wednesday. Sunshine, very warm to hot, humid but not crazy humid. Certainly not with the dew points like we had last week. It'll be a little better Tuesday and Wednesday. Probably starting to turn more uncomfortable on Thursday. We've got some looks like a disturbance moving out of the northern plains with some thunderstorms through the Great Lakes on Wednesday. That goes to our north in upstate New York and into northern New England. Maybe a shower or thunderstorm or two. Looks like it might be more inland later Thursday. GFS is sort of bullish there. Thursday afternoon in central PA and then down through central North and South Carolina. And then that system just kind of gets hung up for a bit, and then maybe a better chance for a shower or thunderstorm on Friday, and then again on Saturday. Looks like something trying to come through. Looks like some kind of warm front coming through, maybe with some showers or a thunderstorm Saturday morning, and then a cold front perhaps for Sunday with some showers and storms, and on it goes. So weather systems are moving along, which means we're going to have more opportunities, but at least for the next couple of days, it looks, I would say it looks reasonable for July. Not too hot, but reasonable.
We knew a week ago, by the way, and the only thing that screwed up was the timing. A week ago, it looked like we were going to get smacked with very heavy rain and possible thunderstorm activity on Saturday, and then it moved to Sunday. But we could see it coming like a week in advance. We knew that there was going to be some problems on the horizon for a week down the road. At least from this standpoint right now, yeah, they're going to be a chance or a threat later in the week or maybe next weekend for showers or scattered thunderstorms, but nothing like what we just went through, because the pattern or the setup, the circumstances are simply not the same. So there.
Do you have Briller Jeopardy or do I?
Well, I have it, but unfortunately, in the setup that I'm working off of a laptop here.
Okay, so you can't bring it up.
I'm not really sure if I could find it. I'm sure I could find it, but if I do that, I may end up cutting you off or cutting off everybody on the chat board. So maybe we just let this go. If you have a Briller Jeopardy tomorrow night.
All right, so we'll do it. We'll do it tomorrow then, because I don't have another one. So
the one other thing, and somebody brought it up on the chat board. I think it was. Let me just see if I can go back. Matthew Hugh, asking about the Northern Lights display. And Joe, this really has rocked my onions,
I
if you
know. I
will.
noticed that. I wanted to mention that to you, that you probably should say something about that.
Um, this has been going on both in mainstream media and social media since late last week, that they have been projecting this coming Thursday night. There's going to be a dramatic display of the aurora borealis. It's going to be visible from 18 states. And I said, where the heck did they get a hold of this? This is crazy. Well, as it turns out, the University of Alaska puts out these aurora forecasts, and it turns out that 7 days in advance, or 1 week, last Thursday, they had a situation where the aurora would be marginally visible as far south as, let's say, upstate New York. And so that's where they got the 18 states from. But really, nobody can make a definitive prediction about a possible aurora display any further out than 48 hours in advance. And a lot of times, those forecasts fall by the wayside. The aurora either happens too early or too late or whatever. But
Or
the
it's not
fact that
strong enough.
long enough, and the thing is that the news media has played this up to the hilt, making it sound like it is going to happen. Oh, we're going to have a display of the Northern Lights this coming Thursday night. I mean, the only thing you could be that definitive on is, let's say, a total eclipse of the sun. Yeah, there's going to be a total eclipse of the sun. Yeah, that's it. But auroras, that's a whole different ball game. And so now I don't know how many thousands, if not millions of people are going to be running out of their house late on Thursday night looking for a display of the Northern Lights. And as I put on my Facebook page today, I said, I don't know who came up with this. Maybe somebody it was a slow news day, or, there's not much going on, or somebody looking for some publicity or whatever, and said, oh, there's going to be an aurora display coming up. It's not happening, folks. It is simply not going to happen. The odds of you seeing an aurora, unless you live up in northern Maine or Alaska or somewhere up in Canada, your odds of seeing an aurora on Thursday night is zilch. And
I don't know why they all got I don't know why they all got fixated on this particular story.
Well, as I said, I was talking with Renato at dinner about this because I saw the ABC Evening News finish their news report tonight by saying, and we're going to have a magnificent auroral display on Thursday night. I said, no. Now, back in the day, if something like this would have come out, certain news organizations would say, this is interesting. Let me do some checking on my own. And they might call the Hayden Planetarium, or they might call a local observatory. And if they did, the local astronomer or whoever's in charge would say the same thing I'm saying.
Right.
I don't know who the heck they got this from, because it ain't going to happen. Or if it is going to happen, it's going to be very, very slight, but they don't do that anymore. Now you could say anything on air, and it's taken as a fact. And
and of course, if one station's got it, then the people that are at the other station that are watching that station will write it down, and then they'll write up a quick story and make sure that their station is saying the same thing, because that's the easiest and laziest way to put a newscast together.
True story. Very quickly. When I started at News 12 in 1995, about a year or so into my stint there, I mentioned on the air that there was going to be a meteor shower. There was the Leonid meteor shower, and it was on a Saturday night. When I came back on Monday, I come into work, and it turns out that there apparently were meteorites that landed in Eastchester, New York. And in fact, one of the reporters actually was sent out to do a story about this. And when she came back, I said, gee, I really wish I could have been there with you to see the meteor. He says, oh, I've got some I have in my pocketbook. And she shows me
right next to my lipstick.
Exactly. I said, these aren't meteorites. It was like an igneous rock or whatever, or mica schist or whatever. I mean, I wasn't big in geology, but I did know enough to know that what she had in her hand was not. And I ran into the news director's office, and the news director, a lovely woman, is a wonderful, wonderful person, atypical news director. She actually cared about people who worked for her. And I said, we can't put this on the air tonight. We can't. We'll be laughed out of the. He said, why? I said, these aren't meteorites. And she said, but Channel 4 had us report on it last night. I mean, it was Joe Avalar who did a
Right.
report on the meteorites in Eastchester, New York. And the news director watching that saying, oh, well, if Channel 4 is doing it, we have to do it too.
Right, of course.
Without doing any checking, without checking into any of this, she just went arbitrarily and she sent out our reporter to go and do this. I came on. We ran the story. I came on right after that and said, "This is a lot of malarkey. This is nothing. This is
Just next time. Send out Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen, and maybe instead of meteorites, they'll find kryptonite."
Exactly. It turned out that we found out that it turned out to be a bunch of kids on a rooftop in Yonkers who were heating up rocks on the roof and then throwing them down at cars that were passing by on. And like one guy, we actually said, "Hey, one of these things actually hit my car." And I said afterwards, I said, if that was really a meteorite that hit your car, you wouldn't be there to make.
Well, now that you have a named asteroid, maybe that'll splinter up and perhaps it'll land on a few people that you and I would love to get rid of.
Yes. All right. Well, I'll be back tomorrow night here in my luxurious living room.
Yes.
With the laptop.
All right. And the Joe and Joe Weather Show is brought to you by Tempest by WeatherFlow, the revolutionary Tempest weather system. Get one. Enjoying the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet. The link is pinned at the top of the chat board. It's also on the descriptor to this video. And any purchases you make there, whether it's this or other weather items, use the coupon code Joe and Joe Weather Show. And if you do, you get 10% off. And our friends at Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York. 631-756-1125 is the phone number for the best prices in town. The website is
OmniTrueValue.com.
All right, everybody, have a great night. Thanks for being here. Izzy D, thanks for hitting Super Chat. And we'll see everybody tomorrow night at 7:35 p.m. Eastern Time. Nighty night.
Night, folks.